This is the Relativity Series from LA Theater Works and the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts in the modern world.
LA Theater Works continues with The Great Tennessee Monkey Trial by Peter Goodchild.
The third day. The trial was as hot as ever, 97 degrees.
Reverend Striblin, would you open the court with prayer?
Our Father, help us to be loyal.
Your Honor, I want to make an objection before the jury comes in.
What is it, Colonel?
I object to prayer, and I object to the jury being present when the court rules on the objection.
What is it?
Colonel Dare objects to the court being opened with prayer, especially in the presence of the jury.
But the jury's not here.
No. Well, I do not want to be unreasonable about anything, but it has been my custom since I've been a judge to have prayers in the courtroom when it was convenient. Now, I believe in prayer. I constantly invoke divine guidance myself when I'm on the bench. Reverend?
Our Father, help us to be...
Just a moment.
Yes?
I understand that His Honor has sometimes opened the court with prayer and sometimes not, and we took no exception on the first day or the second. But seeing that this has persisted and that this case is one where it is claimed by the state that there should be no conflict between science and religion, then above all other cases, there should be no attempt by means of prayer to influence the jury.
It is a case as to whether or not a school teacher has taught a doctrine prohibited by statute. That's all. The ideas extended by the agnostic counsel for the defense are foreign to the thoughts and ideas of the people of this state.
I take exception to the statement, agnostic counsel for the defense.
Your Honor, those prayers we've already heard have been duly argumentative in that they help to increase an atmosphere of hostility to our point of view.
I would advise Mr. Malone that this is a God-fearing country.
And it is no more God-fearing than that from which I come and in which I live.
Gentlemen, do not turn this into an argument. Now, I've instructed the ministers who are leading the prayers to make no reference to the issues involved in this case. Therefore, I am pledged to overrule the objection of counsel and invite Dr. Striblin to open the court with prayer.
I note an exception, Your Honor.
Dr. Striblin, please.
Our Father, to Thee we give all praise for every good thing in life, and we invoke Thy blessings upon us this morning.
When the prayer ended and Ralston adjourned the court, he continued working on his opinion as to whether the case should proceed or be dismissed. However, when the court reconvened later in the afternoon, the defense raised the issue of prayers yet again.
Court will come to order.
Your Honor, may I present a petition to the court from religious representatives here in Dayton? We, the following, petition Your Honor that if you continue opening the court of Ray County with prayer...
Just a minute, I submit that Colonel Hayes is absolutely out of order.
Your Honor.
Your Honor has passed upon the motion of prayer.
I insist upon making this motion.
Well, I am making my exception to the court. You keep your mouth shut.
Will Your Honor hear my motion?
I am making an exception.
I will hear it, Mr. Hayes.
This is entirely out of order. I accept to it with all the vehemence of my nature.
That... if you continue opening the court with prayer, it is requested that you select officiating clergymen from among other than fundamentalist churches. Now, the signatories are eminent men, Your Honor, a rabbi, 2 Unitarians, and a Congregationalist.
Well, I shall ask the Pastors Association from now on to name the man who's to conduct prayer.
Your Honor knows that the Pastors Association are not among the class of men that signed the petition?
Some are perhaps fundamentalists. I don't know.
Days of baking heat, along with delays in the judge's decision, were fueling an already hostile situation. That evening, the defense lawyers took some time to relax. As a publicity stunt, they enjoyed dinner with a distant relative, the immaculately dressed chimpanzee, Big Joe Mendy, who ate ketchup daintily with a spoon. When the court opened on Wednesday, the fourth day, Judge Ralston at last presented his ruling.
The courts are not concerned in questions of public policy, and the motive or wisdom of a statute is the responsibility of the legislature, not of these courts. Further, public schools are not maintained as places of worship, and the relationship between the teacher and his employer are purely contractual. And if his conscience constrains him to teach evolution, he can find opportunities elsewhere. The court, having passed on each ground, is now pleased to overrule the whole motion and require the defendant to plead further.
And there it was. After 3.5 days of legal haggling, Ralston had set the exact limits on the case that the prosecution wanted. But the defense was determined to keep the broader issues in play. Stewart estimated that his whole case would take only an hour, while the defense believed their case would take weeks. Scopes then pleaded,
"Not guilty."
Yesterday afternoon, near the hour of adjournment, I said a thing which, upon reflection, I feel sorry for. As soon as I said it, I knew that I had said the wrong thing, and I want to say to Mr. Hayes that there was nothing back of what I said, nothing back at all except a temporarily roughed temper. And I'm sorry for it, and I apologize.
Oh, I am happy to accept the apology of the Attorney General, on the condition that there be no further reference or allusions that are disrespectful to the state from which counsel for the defense come, and no reference or allusions to the economic, political, social, or religious views of the counsel for the defense. And further, I wish to warn counsel for the prosecution that if statements of that sort are made in the presence of the jury, we will regard them as prejudicial.
After that little dust-up, Dudley Malone, the New York Irish Catholic divorce lawyer, began preparing the ground for the defense's case.
Before you get started, Colonel, I want to thank the little girl, or whoever it may be, that is so mindful of the court as to send up this beautiful bouquet of flowers. Thank you, bailiff. Now, Colonel Malone, I don't want any argumentative statement made in front of the jury. I just want a brief statement of your theory.
I understand, Your Honor. The defense believes that God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. That said, the defense will show that there are millions of people who believe in evolution, as well as in the creation stories set forth in the Bible, and who find no conflict between the two. The defense maintains that such opinions are a matter of faith and interpretation, which each individual must determine for himself. The defense also thinks that there is no conflict between evolution and Christianity. There may be between evolution and peculiar ideas of Christianity, which are held by Mr. Bryan, but we deny that the evangelical leader of the prosecution is an authorized spokesman for the Christians of the United States. Now, I wish to read from a commentary in praise of Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom. It reads, quote, "To attempt to compel people to accept a religious doctrine by act of law is to make not Christians, but hypocrites." End quote. And what could be more true than this statement? And who wrote those words? William Jennings Bryan.
Your Honor, I accept to that part of the statement that was brought in Mr. Bryan's name.
I do not think, Your Honor, Mr. Bryan is the least sensitive about it.
Not a bit. I ask no protection from the court. When the proper time comes, I shall be able to show the gentleman that I stand today just where I did.
It was the first time that Brian spoke, and it was clear that he is no longer thought of as a politician and a job seeker in these godly regions, but has become half man and half archangel. In brief, a sort of fundamentalist pope.
Can I continue?
Yes, proceed, Mr. Malone, please.
We shall prove that Christianity is bound up with no scientific theory and that it has survived 2,000 years in the face of all the discoveries of science. And for the purpose of illustration, we hope to show from embryology the development of a child from a single cell to its birth.
But we do not want him to read that part about the embryo.
Carry on, Mr. Malone, please.
We shall show how during its development in the womb, the embryo actually recapitulates the stages of evolution. And we also expect to show you how vital the theory of evolution is to geology. And finally, the defense denies that it is part of any movement or conspiracy on the part of scientists to destroy the authority of Christianity or the Bible. The defense maintains that Genesis is in part a hymn, in part an allegory, written by men who thought the world was flat, and whose authority simply cannot be accepted to control the teachings of science in our schools. We maintain that science and religion embrace two separate and distinct fields of thought and learning, and we remember what Jesus said: "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's."
Have you finished, Colonel Malone? Any further statement from the state side?
No, none whatever.
After Malone's opening statement, the jury was sworn in, and the first witness was called, Walter White, Superintendent of the Ray County Schools.
Your Honor, I may use a few leading questions just to get the evidence out. Mr. White, now you were one of those present at the meeting in Robinson's drugstore which began this case?
Yes, sir.
And do you know what book Mr. Scopes used?
Mr. Scopes was the science teacher. He taught chemistry, biology, and other science courses.
Yeah, but did he teach from Hunter's biology book?
Yes, sir.
That is all.
What was the conversation between you and Mr. Scopes as to the teaching of Hunter's biology?
Well, he said that he had received the book, as was customary a teacher to do, and that he couldn't teach the book without teaching evolution, and he could not teach evolution without violating the statute, and that...
Did the defendant say it was unconstitutional?
Yes, he defended his action by saying that the statute was unconstitutional.
Now, this book, what's the name of the book again?
George William Hunter's Civic Biology.
And where did Mr. Scopes get it?
Mr. Robinson handles the school books. His store is the depository.
Robinson's Drugstore and Soda Fountain.
Correct.
Hunter's Biology was the official book adopted by the Tennessee Textbook Commission, was it not?
Yes, the official book.
Now, do you know how long this book has been used?
It's been used since 1909. That'll be 16 years.
That's all.
Step down.
Your name is Howard Morgan?
Yes, sir.
And how old are you?
14 years old, sir.
But you're Luke Morgan's son. But your father works at the bank?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, you just state in your own words, Howard, what Professor Scopes taught you and when that was.
Yes, sir. Well, it was around about April 2nd, and he said that the Earth was a hot, molten mass, too hot for any plant or animal life to exist upon it. He said that in the sea, after the Earth cooled off, there was a little germ of a one-cell organism formed, and it kept on evolving, and from this was man.
Good. Now, Howard, how did he classify man with reference to other animals? What did he say about them?
Well, the book and Mr. Scopes both classified man along with cats and dogs and cows and horses and monkeys and all that.
Now, what did he say they were?
Mammals.
And he classified them along with cats and dogs and horses and monkeys and cows?
Yes, sir.
Cross-examine, Colonel Darrow.
Howard, what do you mean by classify?
Well, classifying mean the animals that we've mentioned, that man were just the same as them. In other words...
Now, he didn't say a cat was the same as a man, did he?
Oh, no, sir. He said man had a reasoning power that these animals did not.
Well, there's some doubt about that. But that's what he said?
Well, it is with some men.
A great many. Now, Howard, he said that they were all mammals, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
But did he tell you what distinguished mammals from other animals?
I don't remember.
But he said that dogs and horses and monkeys and cows and man and whales, they were all mammals.
Yes, sir, but I don't know about the whales.
Order.
And you didn't know that the definition of a mammal was a species that suckled its young, did you?
No, sir.
Well, did he tell you anything else that was wicked?
No, sir.
And it's not hurt you any, has it?
No, sir.
That's all.
The last witness to appear for the prosecution was F.E. Robinson, in whose drugstore the famous meeting took place.
General Stewart showed you a book, Civic Biology, which I hold in my hand. You were selling them, were you not?
Yes, sir.
And you were also a member of the school board.
Yes, sir.
Would you now read page 194 and 195, the doctrine of evolution?
We have now learned that animal forms may be arranged so as to begin with very simple one-cell forms and culminate with a group which contains man himself.
Very good. And then this part on 195, man's relationship with the monkeys.
Oh, yes, please, just go right on.
I will, Colonel. Continue, Mr. Robinson.
In their method of learning, although monkeys do not reach the human stage of right ideas, yet in the number of things he learns, the complex habits he can form, the monkey justifies his inclusion with man.
And that's what was read in class.
Yes, sir.
Now, how did you get these books, Mr. Robinson?
From the State Depository at Chattanooga.
You got them from the state authorities.
By the State Board of Education? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, perhaps as Mr. Darragh has seen fit to read from that part of the biology, Your Honor, I want at this point to read the first 2 chapters of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void.
There is, in fact, considerable heat in the trial. And the high point was reached with the appearance of the first witness for the defense, Dr. Metcalf, the eminent zoologist of the Johns Hopkins. The instant the doctor was asked a question, Brian came out from behind the table and planted himself less than 10 feet away.
Give us your name.
Maynard M. Metcalf.
Dr. Metcalf, are you an evolutionist?
Surely under certain circumstances that question would be an insult, but under these circumstances, I do not regard it as such.
Do you know of any scientific man in the world who is not an evolutionist?
Well, we accept to that, of course. Though, if you want them all to take a vote.
Our whole case depends upon proving that evolution is a reasonable scientific theory.
I do not know how you can prove it reasonable by proving what some other person believes. That would be hearsay testimony.
But we expect to prove what all science says.
Then bring them here and offer them. I will hear them. Exception sustained.
Professor Metcalf, what would you say, that practically all scientists...
You know, Your Honor, as we do not yet know if Dr. Metcalf's evidence will be admissible, I suggest that the court reporter and counsel go very close to the witness so that they can hear, but the jury cannot.
As you say, Colonel Stewart, gentlemen.
Now, what would you say? Practically all scientists were or were not evolutionists?
Evolution and the theory of evolution are fundamentally different things. The fact of evolution is perfectly clear, but I doubt any 2 scientists would agree on the exact method by which evolution has been brought about.
Will you state what evolution is, then, with regard to the origin of man?
We accept to that.
How is that?
We are accepting, Your Honor, to everything that mentions evolution.
Your Honor, how is the jury, only one of whom ever read anything about evolution, expected to pass on this question without being told what it is?
Your Honor, we want the jury excluded now. We do not want them to hear any more questions along this line.
If Your Honor, please, I am learning more every day about the procedures of the state of Tennessee. First, that our opponents are objecting to the jury hearing the law, and now they are objecting to the jury hearing the facts.
The objection is sustained. That is, I agree with you, General Stewart. The jury is to vacate.
And so the jury, much to their annoyance, again left the courtroom. Darrow continued to question Metcalf for possible use in a later appeal.
Dr. Metcalf, when did the earliest organisms appear?
It's awfully hard to answer in years. Geologists talk in ages, not years.
More than 6,000 years?
Well, I would say 600 million years is a modest guess. And during that time, this whole great fundamental evolutionary series seen throughout the whole realm of organic life has continued, making it extremely probable that man evolved in the same fashion.
Wednesday, July the 15th, 1925. The doctor was never at a loss for a second, and yet there was no cocksureness in him. And what he got over was a superb counterblast to the fundamentalist bunkum. The jury, at least in theory, heard nothing of it, but it went whooping into the radio and banging into the face of Brian. It is a tragedy indeed to begin one's life as a hero and end it as a buffoon. But let no one laughing at him underestimate the magic that lies in his black, malignant eye and his frayed but still eloquent voice.
The next morning, Thursday, July 16th, the fifth day, the legal wrangle began on whether to admit the expert evidence. Joker and raconteur Ben Mackenzie, the former Attorney General, made the prosecution's case.
May it please Your Honor, since the beginning of this lawsuit, and upon meeting these distinguished gentlemen, I have begun to love them, everyone. I love the great men. Now, on to the question in controversy. The defense, Your Honor, with their evidence and their scientists, are trying to put words into God's mouth. So when he said, and God created man in his own image out of the dust of the ground, they would have us say instead that he issued some sort of protoplasm or some soft dish rag and put it out there in the ocean and said, "Oh boy, if you wait about 6,000 years, I will make something out of you." The divine story is a much more reasonable story to me than that.
General, let me ask you a question. Is it your position that the story of the divine creation is so clearly set forth in the Bible that no reasonable minds could differ?
Yes.
And that God created Adam first as a complete man?
That is right.
And that the cell of life did not develop in time?
Yes, that is right. Man did not descend from a lower order of animals and then changed from one animal to another, and finally a man's head shot up. I don't know where your witnesses have got their evidence, but they are putting it up against the Word of God.
May I interrupt for one moment?
Do you believe the story of divine creation, Mr. Hayes?
Well, that's none of your business.
Then don't interrupt me with your impertinent question.
Before we get started on the afternoon session, I'd like to announce that the floor on which we are now assembled is burdened with a great weight, and I do not know how well it is supported. But sometimes buildings and floors give way. So I suggest that you keep your emotions in check. Now, I believe, Mr. Brown, you're going to speak for the state.
Word that the great Brian was to speak made the courthouse a magnet. And outside, under the cool of the cottonwood trees, even greater crowds gathered to hear the story of the brazen mouths of the loudspeaker, and the whole town became one great sounding board of oratory.
This is LA TheaterWorks' production of The Great Tennessee Monkey Trial by Peter Goodchild.
This play is part of LA TheaterWorks' Relativity Series of science-themed plays. Lead funding for the Relativity Series is provided by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts in the modern world.
Our story continues next time. I'm Susan Lowenberg, producing director of LA TheaterWorks.